The bustle of the day is calmly accepted. When the limelight waned following Britain's Got Talent, Jonathan Antoine's story continued because the heat of the rolling wind can't be turned away. That's when it really started in many respects, with a voice that was likened to Pavarotti. He moved from being a schoolboy who was bullied to becoming famous overnight. Jonathan was the kind of unvarnished revelation that one dreams of on reality TV. Nothing appeared to be able to stop him for a time. However, a young man fighting invisible darkness was hidden behind the soaring sounds. Come hear the truth about what actually happened to BGT's Jonathan Antoine. Applause. Music. In 2022, Jonathan revealed a very intimate diagnosis on Instagram, which completely changed how he saw himself. He had autistic spectrum disorder. Such a realization would have been disturbing to many, but it provided Jonathan with clarity. He had felt throughout his life that he saw the world in a different way. Social contacts were frequently draining. He battled feeling out of step with others and felt overwhelmed in some situations. After receiving the diagnosis, he was able to reinterpret these experiences as a component of his neurological identity rather than as personal shortcomings. Jonathan has openly expressed how the diagnosis was both disturbing and enlightening. On the one hand, it clarified why he had always felt unique, why he struggled to meet the social expectations of stardom, and why music had become such an important release. However, it compelled him to reconsider his prior experiences from a different angle. Sharing this part of his life in public strengthened his relationship with his followers. His courage in publicly discussing autism, dispelling stigma, and demonstrating that being on the spectrum did not limit one's potential for success was widely admired. Jonathan didn't hesitate to be himself, in contrast to celebrities who typically strive to project an ideal of perfection. For Jonathan, receiving a diagnosis of autism marked a new beginning rather than an end. It provided him with the means to better comprehend himself, better manage his mental health, and proceed with more self-compassion. However, just as Jonathan was coming to terms with himself, a significant shift was about to occur that would alter the way the world perceived him. He was not going to disregard his physical well-being this time. One of the most important phases of Jonathan's post-BT life was his physical metamorphosis. His weight dominated public discourse for a large portion of his early career. His voice was universally praised, although his look was frequently criticized for being crewy at times. Jonathan took some of this criticism to heart because he had always battled body image issues, but in recent years he started making deliberate adjustments to better his personal well-being rather than appease his detractors. By combining a healthy diet with mild activity, especially walking, he has shed a few pounds today. Jonathan has made it clear that he was motivated by himself. He wanted to take better care of his long-term health, feel better physically, and have more endurance for performances. This was a crucial distinction. He made it apparent that his path was one of free will rather than giving in to peer pressure. Supporters reacted favorably, praising not only the weight loss but also the apparent confidence and energy that went along with it. Jonathan never forgot that his followers adored his musical ability, even when he lost weight. His voice was not neglected. For Jonathan, this metamorphosis was about taking back his identity rather than changing into someone else. The crowd saw that Jonathan had a more assured stage presence after losing weight. Jonathan noticed several rumors regarding his personal life, along with the increased focus on his appearance. Although Jonathan's music has always been praised, his private life has also aroused interest, especially in relation to romance. Questions concerning dating and relationships have accompanied him virtually since the beginning of his career, which is not surprising for someone who came into the public eye as a teenager. His collaboration with Charlotte Kelly was the subject of a lot of early conjecture. Although there was no denying their on-stage chemistry, Jonathan was keen to deny any notion that their relationship went beyond music. He insisted that they were more like siblings than love partners, calling the rumors scary. A few years later, Jonathan disclosed that he was seeing a Canadian woman named Michelle Douce, providing the first verified look into his love life. Jonathan himself talked about this love with warmth and candor, in contrast to the old rumors. He revealed that they had first connected online via a web chat service, and that their initial virtual exchanges quickly developed into something deeper. Through frequent video chats and visits, they fostered their relationship, Despite their geographical separation, the fact that Jonathan frequently referred to Michelle as the light of my life demonstrated how profoundly she affected him. Jonathan credited her as a muse for his 2016 album Believe, demonstrating how their connection even served as a source of creative inspiration. Nevertheless, Jonathan has always exercised caution when disclosing too much about his personal life. He seems to prefer to keep romance out of the spotlight so that his music may continue to be the focal point of his public persona. Jonathan's music continued to be the unwavering thread that propelled his career toward outstanding solo accomplishments, even while his romantic relationship provided brief moments of warmth and security. Jonathan's career took off on its own, slowly but surely. Following Tenor, he put out Believe in 2016, an album that demonstrated his flexibility as well as his operatic strength. It combined crossover, religious, and classical music, demonstrating his aim to appeal to a wide range of listeners while remaining loyal to his heritage. His increasing self-assurance as a musician and music interpreter was evident on the record. Jonathan's project, Going the Distance, was released in 2020 amid the chaos of a worldwide epidemic. The world was uncertain, but Jonathan's music provided comfort. The collection had both surprise selections and beloved favorites. His interpretations were extremely intimate and reflected a lifetime of emotional experiences. In addition to technical proficiency, supporters appreciated the piece because they saw in it not only the prodigy's voice, but also the vision of a fully realized artist. Live performances and touring also became essential components of his career. In order to reach listeners who had first heard his music on YouTube videos years prior, Jonathan flew abroad and performed in both the US and Europe. In addition to enhancing Jonathan's influence as an artist, this growing audience set the stage for future opportunities and financial security. Jonathan's journey has resulted in considerable financial stability, despite the fact that he is not the type of artist who flaunts wealth or pursues celebrity trappings. Because of the consistent popularity of his albums, concert tours, and special appearances, his net worth is estimated by a number of sources to be between $1.5 million and $5 million. His financial situation has been mostly shaped by solo albums and record deals that followed his BGT ascent. Furthermore, his wealth and international reputation have increased as a result of his performances on foreign platforms. Jonathan has maintained a career by building a devoted fan base that enthusiastically follows his work, in contrast to many reality TV discoveries who eventually fade into obscurity. Jonathan's perspective on wealth and celebrity, however, is still realistic. He has frequently underlined that for him, music is about connection, healing, and artistic development more than income. Jonathan's future is full of possibilities and complexities. There is a lot of conjecture that Jonathan would pursue composing further, possibly creating original works that capture his experiences. Given his audience's global reach and his prior experimentation with cross-genre performances, international collaborations also appear to be a plausible path. Jonathan has alluded in interviews to his desire to break down barriers to accessibility by introducing classical crossover music to younger listeners. One must remember that Jonathan was merely gifted from an early age in order to understand how his career progressed to this point. Jonathan was a modest, sensitive youngster who naturally turned to music as a means of expression long before he became well known. Early on, his parents and instructors recognized that he had a unique voice. Jonathan had a unique timbre even as a youngster, whilst other kids might just scream out songs without any creativity. He started taking official singing lessons when he was 11 years old. And it soon became clear that he was not simply another eager learner, but rather a unique talent with the capacity to achieve greatness. His scholastic years were influenced by both artistic development and adversity. Because of his appearance and demeanor, Jonathan was frequently the target of bullying, which left him with severe emotional wounds. But music gave him a sense of direction and an escape, and it ended up being his comfort and protection. Jonathan met Jeanette Brown, the head of music at West Hatch High School in Chigwell, and Jenny Ewington, a vocal coach. These mentors saw the raw, untamed brilliance in his voice and looked past his awkward teenage demeanor. They helped Jonathan reach his full potential. He had already mastered difficult pieces by the time his voice broke during puberty. He won Young Musician of the Year at a local music festival when he was just 13 years old and performed Bring Him Home from Les Miserables. This was a turning point that made it clear that music was his future. He also got his first sense of how profoundly he could affect audiences despite his own self-doubt thanks to the experience. Jonathan tried out for prominent conservatories in London after being encouraged by his teachers. Surprisingly, he got admitted to each of them, ultimately deciding to further his education at the Royal Academy of Music. Such a feat would have been overwhelming for most youngsters. However, Jonathan entered this next chapter with a mixture of insecurity and pride. His fate was music. However, he was not yet aware of the momentous occasion that would await him in 2012 when millions of people would see him on television. Jonathan's life would eventually change. As a result of this early foundation of talent, Jonathan Antoine was only 17 years old in 2012 when he made an appearance on Britain's Got Talent. He appeared as though the limelight was an intimidating glare rather than a warm hug as he stood next to his schoolmate Charlotte Giaconelli. As he introduced himself to the judges, viewers could feel his nervousness. Ever perceptive and quick to criticize appearances, Simon Cowell furrowed his eyebrows doubtfully. Jonathan didn't appear to be the kind of person who would make a star. However, time seemed to halt when he opened his mouth and began singing the first few words of the prayer. Shock and astonishment swept through the room as the judges and audience were astounded by the tenor voice that spilled out of him. It was one of those infrequent TV moments where everything is suddenly reversed. Simon, seeming skeptical at first, leaned forward in shock. David Williams grinned as if he were seeing something monumental, and Amanda Holden and Alicia Dixon exchanged shocked looks. A duet that sounded almost cinematic was produced by Jonathan's deep operatic voice, blending with Charlotte's soprano. The two went from obscure teenagers to viral sensations in a matter of minutes. Within days, videos of their audition became viral on the internet, receiving millions of views. Overnight, Jonathan's life changed. From being teased at school and withdrawing into himself, he became a national hero in Britain and abroad. On the street, strangers halted him to compliment his voice. He was heralded as the boy with the golden voice and the new Pavarotti in the headlines. Jonathan, however, found it difficult to adjust to the abrupt change behind his newfound celebrity. There was so much devotion. Furthermore, Jonathan frequently appeared surprised by the spotlight, but Charlotte seemed to handle it more easily. Despite his apparent brilliance, his inner life was not yet prepared to keep up with the quickening pace of his notoriety. A fortuitous coincidence, Jonathan Antoine and Charlotte Giaconelli's partnership became one of the most memorable in the history of Britain's Got Talent. The two, known as Jonathan and Charlotte, won people over with their vocals and their obvious camaraderie. Their shared passion for music had brought them together while they were West Hatch High School classmates. Charlotte, who was self-assured and gregarious, praised Jonathan's timidity. She frequently served as his rock, urging him to speak up when his nerves threatened to overwhelm him. The unrefined yet genuine chemistry between them struck a chord with millions of people. Following their triumphant tenure on BGT, the duo inked a recording deal with Simon Cowell's company Psycho. For two kids who are still figuring out who they are in the world, it was an incredible leap. Later in 2012, they released their first album together, which featured both crossover and operatic hits. Their status as rising stars in the classical crossover genre was cemented when the record was listened to by people all over the world. Perhaps Love, their follow-up collection from 2013, demonstrated their development as performers. But for Jonathan, the experience was a mix of struggle and victory. He gave incredible performances both on stage and in the studio, but he battled insecurities off stage. Despite its benefits, the collaboration also started to draw attention to their individual peculiarities. Jonathan was becoming more and more entrenched in the operatic tradition, while Charlotte was lured to a more modern musical path. Although their artistic views were not totally in sync, their voices melded well. As evidence that genuineness and skill could cut through the clutter of contemporary pop culture, fans loved their friendship just as much as their music. However, it was evident by 2014 that their career paths would diverge. The unavoidable choice to pursue solitary professions presented both exciting prospects and difficult obstacles as they came to terms with these conflicting aspirations. Jonathan and Charlotte made their professional separation official in February 2014. It was not a sour split, nor was it motivated by personal strife or controversy. Instead, it was a recognition that each had a distinct artistic voice that was unable to completely develop in a duet setting. Sony Classical had offered each of them solo recording contracts, and they both believed it was time to pursue their own careers. This was both thrilling and horrifying for Jonathan. Charlotte's comforting presence was gone from his side, had lost a companion with whom to share the weight of expectations. There was more to going solo than just singing by yourself. It meant figuring out his own artistic identity. He successfully established himself in the operatic genre with his ambitious debut solo album, Tori, which was released in October 2014. Following their triumphant tenure on BGT, the duo inked a recording deal with Simon Cowell's company Psycho. For two kids who are still figuring out who they are in the world, it was an incredible leap. Later in 2012, they released their first album together, which featured both crossover and operatic hits. Their status as rising stars in the classical crossover genre was cemented when the record was listened to by people all over the world. Perhaps Love, their follow-up collection from 2013, demonstrated their development as performers. But for Jonathan, the experience was a mix of struggle and victory. He gave incredible performances both on stage and in the studio, but he battled insecurities off stage. Despite its benefits, the collaboration also started to draw attention to their individual peculiarities. Jonathan was becoming more and more entrenched in the operatic tradition, while Charlotte was lured to a more modern musical path. Although their artistic views were not totally in sync, their voices melded well. As evidence that genuineness and skill could cut through the clutter of contemporary pop culture, fans loved their friendship just as much as their music. However, it was evident by 2014 that their career paths would diverge. The unavoidable choice to pursue solitary professions presented both exciting prospects and difficult obstacles as they came to terms with these conflicting aspirations. Jonathan and Charlotte made their professional separation official in February 2014. It was not a sour split, nor was it motivated by personal strife or controversy. Instead, it was a recognition that each had a distinct artistic voice that was unable to completely develop in a duet setting. Sony Classical had offered each of them solo recording contracts, and they both believed it was time to pursue their own careers. This was both thrilling and horrifying for Jonathan. Charlotte's comforting presence was gone from his side, had lost a companion with whom to share the weight of expectations. There was more to going solo than just singing by yourself. It meant figuring out his own artistic identity. He successfully established himself in the operatic genre with his ambitious debut solo album, Tori, which was released in October 2014. It demonstrated the strength and maturity of his voice and included timeless songs like Panis Angelicus and La Donna è Mobile. His technical mastery and emotional depth were commended by critics, who also pointed out that he had effectively shifted from being a reality show celebrity to a serious tenor. His status as more than just a novelty act from a TV talent show was cemented by the album's popularity. But there were drawbacks to the change as well. Jonathan was under more scrutiny without the security of a spouse. Every public appearance and performance was examined. This may be a terrifying encounter for someone who previously battled with self-esteem. Jonathan's career achievements were preceded by a history of hardship. He had been bullied for years before he took the stage at BGT. Music had been his haven during those years. However, it was unable to take away the discomfort. Those memories haunted him even after he achieved stardom. In interviews, he has been candid about how the bullying fueled his depressive and self-doubting episodes. Although it provided affirmation, fame did not miraculously end these difficulties. Actually, it frequently made things more intricate. There was a lot of pressure to live up to the youngster with the Golden Voices reputation. Social media delivered harsh criticism in addition to praise. People made remarks about his appearance, weight, and shyness, as if his artistic ability weren't as important as his attractiveness. This was a great weight for a sensitive young man who was still developing his identity. Jonathan refused to let his difficulties dictate his narrative. He turned to his loved ones and close friends for support, sought assistance, and eventually learned how to talk candidly about mental health. By talking about his experiences, he was able to heal himself and give hope to those going through similar struggles. He has backed initiatives that raise awareness of neurodiversity, kindness, and self-acceptance. He regularly reminds audiences at events that showing vulnerability is a sign of strength rather than weakness. Parents and teachers frequently tell how his tenacity has motivated kids who are struggling with bullying or self-doubt. For Jonathan, these intimate moments have equal significance as standing ovations. Jonathan, who just co-authored the children's book Jonathan and the Porcupine, is a vocal advocate for the rights and welfare of young people. Its goal was to assist children in managing and overcoming the negative impacts of bullying. In the documentary Anxious Nation, which examines anxiety and mental health issues in contemporary life, he also made an appearance. Prior to this, Jonathan also expressed a strong desire to increase music's accessibility for kids from underprivileged families, having seen firsthand how profoundly music can alter a young person's course in life. Even if these projects are still in their infancy, his dedication and perspective make it obvious that he is committed to using his influence responsibly and purposefully. Jonathan Antoine's path is expected to be as inspirational as the tale that has led him to this point, whether it is through new albums, international tours, or campaigning for mental health and autism awareness.